All right, get ready, because today we are going deep into homemade pasta. You know, I always thought making pasta from scratch was like this super complicated Italian grandma only kind of thing, but going through this guide, I'm realizing it might be easier than I thought. What do you think? Have you ever tried making your own pasta?
You are not alone in thinking that. There's definitely an aura of mystique around homemade pasta, but the truth is the core process is surprisingly simple. And the fascinating thing is that very simplicity allows for this incredible depth of flavor and texture. You see, when you make pasta from scratch, something amazing happens. The kneading process helps develop these unique flavor compounds that you just don't get in store-bought dried pasta.
Really? So it's not just the freshness, there's like a chemical reason why homemade just tastes better.
Exactly. It's all about gluten development and the interaction of flour, water, and even the tiny bit of protein that's found in egg yolks. As you knead, these ingredients transform, creating a depth of flavor that's truly unique to fresh pasta.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So tell me, when we talk about ingredients, is it really just flour, eggs, and salt? Because I've seen some recipes that call for olive oil in the dough.
You've got a sharp eye. You're right, the classic recipe is incredibly simple, just durum wheat flour, eggs, and a touch of salt. The olive oil is optional, and honestly, its impact on the final pasta is debated. Some say it adds like a silkiness to the dough, others argue it's unnecessary. Personally, I find that a well-hydrated dough, achieved through proper kneading, is silky enough on its own.
So maybe that's one of those things that people can experiment with as they get more comfortable, right? Speaking of getting comfortable, what about kneading? This guide says 8 to 10 minutes. Have you ever run into trouble hitting that sweet spot?
Oh, absolutely. Kneading is where the magic happens, but it's also where things can go awry. Too little kneading, and your dough will be tough and difficult to roll. But over-knead, and you risk developing too much gluten, resulting in pasta that's chewy and dense. It's all about feeling the dough transform under your hands, going from shaggy and lumpy to smooth and elastic.
So it's really a sensory thing, like you have to develop a feel for it.
Yeah.
I guess that's why people say making pasta is almost therapeutic, huh?
It really is. There's something meditative about the repetitive motion of kneading, feeling the dough come together. And you're right, that tactile feedback is crucial. If the dough feels dry and resists stretching, add a teaspoon of water at a time. If it's sticky and clings to your fingers, sprinkle in a bit more flour. It's a dance between you and the dough.
All right, so we've got our dough. It's smooth, it's elastic, we're feeling like pasta masters. What's next?
Now comes a crucial step, the rest. And this is where we tap into some interesting food science. See, that gluten we develop through kneading, it needs time to relax and organize itself. Resting the dough for at least 30 minutes, ideally an hour, allows the gluten strands to form a strong network, which ultimately leads to that beautiful al dente texture we all crave in pasta.
I've heard some people say they rest their dough overnight in the fridge. Is that overkill, or does it actually make a difference?
That's a great question. You know what? It's actually a bit of a debate in the pasta world. Some swear by a longer rest, claiming it enhances the flavor and texture even further. Others, myself included, find that a good hour on the counter is sufficient, especially if you're using high-quality flour.
Okay, so maybe it's one of those personal preference kind of things once you get the hang of the basics. But either way, we're definitely letting that dough chill out for a bit. So after the rest, we're ready to roll, right? Literally.
Exactly. It's time to transform that smooth ball of dough into a canvas for our pasta creations. And that's where we'll pick up next time.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned.
All right, we're back, and our dough is rested, relaxed, and ready to be rolled out. Now, I'll admit, I've always been a little intimidated by the whole rolling pin thing. It seems like you need some serious arm muscles and grandma-level skills to get that perfectly thin sheet of pasta.
You know, it's funny you say that, because that image of a nana effortlessly rolling out pasta dough is so iconic, right? But it wasn't always that way. In fact, early pasta tools were much simpler, often just a wooden dowel or even a bottle. It wasn't until the Renaissance that the rolling pin, as we know it, emerged. And even then, achieving those paper-thin sheets was a mark of true culinary skill.
So there's a whole history behind this seemingly simple tool. I guess it makes sense, considering pasta itself has been around for centuries.
Exactly. You know, it's a common misconception that Marco Polo brought pasta back from China. In reality, there's evidence of pasta-like dishes in Italy, dating back to Roman times, and likely even earlier. It seems humans have had a love affair with noodles for a very, very long time.
That's amazing. So when it comes to rolling out the dough, do you have any tips for us non-nons who might not have those legendary arm muscles?
Absolutely. First, don't be afraid to start with a slightly thicker sheet and gradually roll it thinner as you get more comfortable. Second, keep your work surface well floured to prevent sticking. And third, if you find yourself struggling, a pasta machine can be a lifesaver.
Okay, so a pasta machine is not cheating, because I was kind of eyeing one online.
Not at all. Pasta machines are a fantastic tool, especially if you're making larger batches or want to experiment with more intricate shapes. They allow for consistent thinness and can make the process much faster. But even with a machine, it's important to develop a feel for the dough. You still want to make sure it's not too sticky or too dry, adjusting the settings as needed.
Gotcha. So whether we're going old school with a rolling pin or embracing technology with a pasta machine, the goal is that thin, almost translucent sheet of dough.
Right.
And then the real fun begins shaping the pasta.
Exactly. This is where your creativity can really shine. Now, I know we talked about some classic shapes earlier, like tagliatelle, fettuccine, lasagna, but did you know there are literally hundreds of pasta shapes, each with its own unique history and regional significance?
Whoa, hundreds. Okay, you officially blew my mind. So it's more than just looks. There's actually a reason behind all those different shapes.
Absolutely. Pasta shapes evolved over time, often influenced by local ingredients and traditions. For example, in coastal regions, you'll find shapes like orecchiette, which resemble little ears, and were traditionally made by pressing dough against the thumb. They're perfect for catching chunky seafood sauces.
That makes so much sense. It's like each shape has a purpose, a story to tell.
Exactly, and that's what makes pasta so fascinating. It's not just a food, it's a window into history, culture, and regional identity.
All right, I'm officially hooked on pasta history.
Yeah.
But let's get back to our own pasta making adventure. We've rolled out our dough, we're feeling inspired by all these amazing shapes. What are some tips for actually cutting and forming the pasta?
Well, first, remember that sharp tools are your best friend. A sharp knife or a dedicated pasta cutter will make clean, even cuts, preventing the dough from tearing or sticking. And don't be afraid to get creative. You can use cookie cutters, forks, even your fingers to create unique shapes.
So it's really about having fun with it and not getting too caught up in perfection, right? Because let's be honest, my first batch of ravioli might look a little rustic.
And that's perfectly okay. Remember, homemade pasta is about embracing those imperfections, celebrating the handmade quality. It's those little quirks that make it special, that give it character. And honestly, even rustic ravioli are going to taste 1,000,000 times better than anything you can buy in a box.
You know what? You're right. I'm feeling less intimidated and more excited now. It's about the experience, the process.
Yeah.
And of course, the delicious end result. Speaking of which, we haven't even talked about the most important part, the sauce.
Oh, sauce.
But we'll save that for next time when we continue our pasta deep dive. We're back and ready to talk sauce. I mean, what's a beautiful plate of homemade pasta without its perfect sauce companion?
You're absolutely right. The sauce is crucial. It's like the finishing touch, the perfect complement to all the hard work we've put in to crafting our pasta. It's got to be a harmonious marriage of flavors and textures.
Well, our guide highlighted 3 classics: marinara, carbonara, and pesto. Let's start with marinara. I have to admit, sometimes I feel like marinara gets overlooked because it's so simple.
Yeah,
But there's something so satisfying about a really good classic marinara.
you hit the nail on the head. Marinara often gets relegated to basic status. But the truth is, it's a true testament to the power of simplicity when you have quality ingredients. Ripe tomatoes, fragrant garlic, fresh basil. You don't need much else. It's all about letting those flavors shine through.
Okay, I'm sold. Now, you mentioned quality ingredients. Is there anything specific we should look for when choosing tomatoes for marinara?
That's a great question. If you can find them, San Marzano tomatoes are the gold standard for marinara. They have a lower acidity and a sweeter flavor that really elevates the sauce. But honestly, any ripe, flavorful tomato will work. And don't be afraid to use canned tomatoes. They're often picked at peak ripeness and can be just as delicious as fresh.
Good to know. So marinara is all about simplicity. But then we have carbonara, which seems a bit more complex, shall we say. I've definitely had some questionable carbonaras in my life. What are the keys to getting it right?
Carbonara, a dish shrouded in myth and often misunderstood. The key here is balance, a delicate dance between creamy richness and savory saltiness. And the secret weapon, pasta water. That starchy, salty water is what emulsifies the eggs and cheese, creating that silky smooth sauce that clings to every strand of pasta.
So no cream. I swear I've seen recipes that call for cream in carbonara.
That's a common misconception. Traditional carbonara is cream-free. It's all about that emulsion, created by the pasta water, eggs, and grated cheese, usually pecorino romano, or a blend of pecorino and parmigiano reggiano.
Okay, no cream. Got it. Now what about the pancetta? It seems like there's a fine line between crispy and burnt.
You're right. The pancetta needs to be cooked just right, crisp but not burnt, rendered of its fat, but still slightly chewy. And the key is to let it cool slightly before adding it to the sauce. That way it won't scramble the eggs.
Okay, so I'm starting to feel like a carbonara pro. Now let's move on to pesto. What I love about pesto is its versatility. It's delicious on pasta, of course,
Right.
but also works as a spread, a dip, a topping for grilled chicken. The possibilities are endless.
You're preaching to the choir here. I'm a huge fan of pesto's adaptability. And while basil is the classic choice, you can really let your imagination run wild. With different herbs and greens, arugula, spinach, even parsley, can all create delicious variations. And don't be afraid to add a little something extra for texture. Toasted pine nuts are traditional, but walnuts, pistachios, or even sunflower seeds can add a unique twist.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we've got our 3 classics covered, but I'm curious, what are some more unusual or regional Italian sauces that our listeners might want to explore?
Oh, there are so many. If you're feeling adventurous, try a spicy arrabbiata sauce from Rome. It's a tomato-based sauce with a fiery kick from chili peppers. Or venture north to Tuscany and try a simple yet delicious aglio e olio, garlic and olive oil, gently infused with the starchy pasta water. And if you're a seafood lover, you can't go wrong with a Sicilian-style pasta con la sarde, featuring sardines, fennel, and saffron.
Wow, you've officially opened up a whole new world of pasta possibilities, and it just goes to show that making pasta from scratch is more than just following a recipe. It's about exploring flavors, traditions, regional variations. It's about connecting with a culinary heritage that spans centuries.
Beautifully said. And you know, it's also about the joy of creation, the satisfaction of transforming simple ingredients into something truly delicious and special.
Exactly. So whether you're a seasoned pasta pro or a curious beginner, I encourage you to embrace the adventure. Don't be afraid to get your hands messy, try new things, and discover the magic of homemade pasta.
And most importantly, have fun, because at the end of the day, that's what cooking is all about. Sharing delicious food and creating memories with the people you love.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Happy cooking, everyone.